Hey, what's up everybody? Pat Flynn here. Another episode of SPI TV for you, and I'm here with Mike Dillard from MikeDillard.com. A number of friends of mine had gotten me to learn about you, and I'm really excited about this because I actually don't know very much about you, but I was told that I would be an idiot not to talk to you because you have a lot of great information to share, and I was on your website, and I love that, like when you describe yourself like I do, you describe yourself first as a father, which I think is really important. And you just told me that you're going to go camping later and be with your boy and stuff, and that means a lot to me. That's how I know that your values are in the right place, when that's like the first thing I notice about what you have on your website. But can you tell everybody and kind of introduce yourself? What is it that you do?
Sure. Nice to meet everybody, and I've followed your stuff for a while, and in fact, your series of podcast training videos that you have for free on YouTube are what I dove into to start my podcast 6 months ago. And now it's the number one personal development podcast. It's up in the top 10 in self-help with Lewis and all those guys on a regular basis. So so thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
But no, I started, I guess, my first business about 10 years ago, and really discovered attraction marketing and direct response marketing from the old guys like Dan Kennedy and Yannick Silver and Perry Marshall and all of that, and ended up building a business in the network marketing industry using internet marketing strategies, and that was really how I got my start. That turned into a multiple 8-figure business over the course of about 4 years, and then I handed that off to my business partner and then dove into finance and investing because we talk so much about how to make money in the entrepreneurial world, but no one ever talks about what to do with the money that you make. And I had made a lot of mistakes with mine. I wanted to master, investing in finance, and so I started a business in that world, and it did quite well. We did $3 million in revenue in our first 7 days. We did 8 figures in our first 12 months. We had over 50,000 customers in our first 36 months around the world, and handed that off to my business partner there about a year ago. So those have been my 2 primary companies. And now I'm diving into a completely new world, which is the organic produce industry. And my goal is to put clean, healthy food back on families' tables at night at prices that they can afford, because it's become such an, unfortunately, a luxury. It's become a luxury. If you can't afford to shop at Whole Foods every week, you're eating spinach that on average has 54 different pesticide residues on it. And so my goal is to solve that problem.
I love that. And how are you tackling that problem?
It's interesting. Peter Diamandis is a friend of mine.
Bold.
And bold and abundance and XPRIZE and all of that stuff. And we look at all of the industries out there like Uber and Airbnb and 99 Designs that have decentralized these massive industries. And about 2 years ago when I started thinking about this, I was like, why hasn't anyone decentralized the ag industry? And it's arguably the biggest industry in the world that will never go away, and yet it's probably had the least amount of innovation. So I started studying the hydroponics world, aquaponics world on a pretty intense basis, and I saw some potential for solutions out there, but that industry is really interesting. It's run by extremely smart people who are scientists and extremely passionate about agriculture, but none of them have any real business acumen. And they don't know how to serve a customer base. And so I saw an opportunity there to really develop a new technology platform that you'll put in your house just like an appliance, and it'll grow all of the organic produce that you would want on a monthly basis. Wow. So per year, it'll grow about $5,000 worth of organic food, 160 different varieties for less than $500. So you get a 90% reduction in your food costs, you get a 100% reduction in your pesticides and chemicals. You completely remove the entire supply chain of agriculture, from the farm to the trucking to the middlemen to the retail, and it starts and ends in your kitchen. And so we've been working on that for about a year, and Peter Diamandis is actually a business partner in that business, and we'll hopefully bring it out here in 2016. So.
Cool. And how are you going to see that or be able to have an opportunity to participate?
It's a bit hugely top secret at the moment, so I still haven't mentioned the name. But if you get on my newsletter at MikeDillard.com, I'll obviously keep everybody up to date on that. But awesome. It's interesting. I'm all in on this one. All of my finances and cash and everything are kind of, all the chips are on the table. So
well, this is huge. This is like world impacting, and hopefully it's not just the cost savings from people that people have, but it's also the health and the fitness, which will have this butterfly effect across everything. So that's really cool. Let me know when that happens. I'd love to support it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, going back to some of your first businesses, I heard that you got started around 2008, around that time, which is when I got started too. What were your first steps when you kind of got into the entrepreneurial world? What was life like then?
Well, it was interesting. I was in the network marketing industry and I absolutely hated it. And I didn't realize why for about 5 years. And then I finally figured out the fact that I'm an introvert in a hugely extrovert industry that is dependent upon holding parties, networking, shaking hands, and all of that stuff. And so I wondered why I struggled for so many years, and then I realized I could build that business by using direct response. And so I started to use those strategies. I learned Google AdWords and started to build a business for the first time. And I ended up putting those strategies in a book that I called Magnetic Sponsoring. That was 2005, 2006, when Corey Rudel was still around and the very first ebook platforms were out. And I just wrote that in Microsoft Word. It was about 55 pages long, and started selling it online on a sales letter that I wrote and coded myself, way back in the day, for $39. And within a month or two, I was selling 30 to 50 copies a day. And so that's 50, 60 grand a month in revenue. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Fortunately, the book was good, and it got a ton of great feedback and kind of spread on its own from that regard. And then that turned into really an information publishing business. So got an office, produced 6 or 7 more products. I think the most we ever did was about 6 or 7 million in annual revenue. And I did that for about 4 years. And then the challenge wore off. I really said everything that I felt like I had to say. I'd given the value that I had to give. And at that point, the business I lost interest in it. And I wasn't in it for the business. I was in it to share the value that I had, and as soon as tank was empty, I was like, okay, time to move on to a new challenge. So, yeah.
That's really cool. So it sounds like you build something, it's awesome, and then you kind of hand that off, and then you move on to the next thing. Yeah,
I think once I've created the solution that I'm after, it feels like the job is done at that point, and that, for me, that's been about every 4 or 5 years I move on to a new venture.
Now, do you go into those new ventures wanting to exit or planning to exit, or does it kind of just happen?
No, it kind of happens, so I've done it twice. I've identified the cycle, but I think if you're not growing, then you're moving backwards, and for me, that's not a very fun place to be.
Yeah.
And I just, when you're putting your heart into something, which you would know if as essentially an author or a media author, you're putting your heart and your soul into what you're producing. And the minute you don't feel that, it's just like you're doing it because you have to. It's the job at that point. So I think at that moment, it's time to move on to something new.
Right. Let's talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of people, entrepreneurs, I've gone through that myself, where I do feel like I'm just kind of going through the motions and it's just what I'm supposed to do, and I lose that fire sometimes.
Yeah.
But I also know in the back of my head that it is what I'm supposed to do. So how do you balance knowing that that's what you should continue doing, even though it's hard and you're kind of fighting that resistance in your head? What recommendations would you have for somebody who's dealing with that?
Well, for me, my goal is to use the lessons learned and the skills gains from the previous company to think bigger and dream bigger and to push myself. And that's really the intentionality that I've had around each of my moves. And the first one in the network marketing industry, it's a fairly small niche. And I didn't realize that until I was at the top of it, and the business topped out at 6 million in revenue. I'd never seen anyone do more than that. And so I was like, all right, this is the king of Everest at this point, and it's a pretty small world, even though you're the big fish in it. So that was really the inspiration part of the inspiration to move on to finance, which is an infinitely bigger world, and that's why the business did so much more revenue in the first year than the other one had done in 6. So, so that was a big way for me to personally stretch, and then now I'm again trying to keep that attitude where it's like, what is something that I can do that will have an impact on potentially every person on the planet? And for me, the goal is a lot of legacy at this point. I'm 38 years old, I've got my son, and I want to wake up every single day thinking and knowing that there are families around the world who are using my product and becoming healthier for it.
Yeah.
And so even if I do that and die in 2 years, I'm, life well lived. Right. So
that vision's really important. This is something I learned with Hal Elrod. It's kind of part of your morning routine in that book, The Miracle Morning, to think about the future and how people might use the products that you're creating and benefiting from what you have to offer. So that's great to hear that you do that too. Going back to finance, I'm interested because I actually spoke with Ryan Moran on my podcast a while back about strategies for investing.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't talk about very much. So whenever I have an opportunity to do that, I think a lot of people are interested. So
Sure.
on a higher level, like what are some strategies that people can use to really make their money work for them in ways other than, just starting a business?
Well, it's interesting. The most valuable lessons I learned through that, that last 3 or 4 year window is that the most important thing you have to figure out first is how you emotionally react with money. And what I learned is that as a successful entrepreneur, you get confidence in your ability to generate cash flow, which can get you out of all kinds of problems or create all kinds of opportunities. And but it does not create a lot of stability. And so, if you're, I'm assuming, familiar with Colby.
Yep.
What do you mind? What is your score if you remember it?
Gosh, I don't remember.
Okay.
It's been so long.
That's all right. It's all right. So most entrepreneurs have a really high quick start score. I'm an 8 out of 10. Most entrepreneurs are 8s, 9s, or 10s.
I think I remember it. Yeah, I'm around that area.
Yeah, we're okay. We're super fine with risk, and we're super comfortable making fast decisions. And so that works great in the business realm. It is completely antithetical to the finance realm, and it gets you in a lot of trouble. So. So for me, once I figured out why I was making the decisions I was making from a financial perspective, then I could successfully create systems and solutions to circumvent that and to basically protect myself from my personality type. And so the most important things that I ever did, given those traits, is that I systematized my savings and wealth building, essentially, and I put them in really safe, secure vehicles. A lot of precious metals in the very beginning to create a foundation, and then a strategy called infinite banking that uses a very specific strategy around whole life insurance. You're not using it for insurance, you're using the legality of the insurance model to get some advantages through that particular vehicle that are advantageous to you. So,
what is that called again?
It's typically referred to as infinite banking or cash flow banking.
Okay.
And Tony Robbins actually talks about this in his book as well that he came out recently on finance. So, but what that does is it can serve as a very systematic, safe environment for you to automatically put money into on a monthly basis. And so it's not dependent upon me to transfer money into that account, because as entrepreneurs, we don't have anyone taking money out of our paycheck and investing it, into a fund. So it'll do that for you, and the goal is to become a little bit richer every single month. And it also keeps it at arm's length. And so it's not tied to a checking account where I can just transfer money in my Wells Fargo account if I need the money. I have to go through a transfer process, and there's some headaches involved that make it inconvenient to pull the money out. So that key in particular was huge. I set up a goal to have a certain amount of money available by the time that I turned 60. And so that goal was to be able to pull out $100,000 a month, starting at the age of 60 all the way to 100. So 40 years at 100 grand a month, I was like, that would provide a pretty epic lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so we started with that goal and said, okay, well, how much would we need to start funding that account on a monthly basis now? And we started doing that. And the neat part about that particular strategy is that it's completely separate from the stock market. So if the stock market tanks like it did in 08, I don't lose a dime. And that, from an entrepreneurial perspective and a savings perspective, is super important, obviously. Yeah. So once you have that established, well, then you can start moving into a bit more, risky, asset classes. I've done a lot of investing in cash flow real estate apartment complexes here in Texas, and I don't know the first thing about real estate at all, zero. But if you go out and you find the right team to invest with, which I did here in Austin, second generation family, unbelievably ethical, amazing, conservative, experts in that realm, write them a check. And on average, I think I've done 2 or 3 complexes with them, 20 to 30% return a year. And that's been the extent of it. So.
That's awesome. I love it. If somebody wanted to get started, maybe they're starting to make a little bit of money in their business, how can they start small?
From an investing perspective,
yeah.
I like the infinite banking strategy the best because, again, there's zero risk to it. You don't have to wake up every day and worry about if the stock market's in the green or the red. And again, it automates that process. So for me, when I decided to fund this hydroponics company, which is well over $1 million in funding so far, I had that nest egg built up, and then I could pull that money out and really use that to seed, as the seed capital for this business. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I was on your website and I saw that you're into racing and like the Baja 1000 and all that stuff. And with all these other big, great things that you're doing, like how do you balance, like talk about your lifestyle a little bit. Like what's a day like for Mike Dillard?
It's interesting. Over the last year since I left the finance business and I've basically been reinventing everything, it's amazing how 10 years in this industry feels like forever. And so for me, it's really been taking some time off. But now with launching the hydroponics business, ideally in the middle of next year, it's going to be the biggest challenge I've ever taken on in my life. So right now I'm actually focused on becoming a corporate athlete, if you will. And I don't like the word corporate, entrepreneurial athlete, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I like that though. Explain.
Well, changing, doing what I need to do from a health perspective so that I have the energy and the stamina to accomplish my goals in that business. And, that's going to be 15, 18-hour days for at least a year.
Yeah.
And I know that. And so what can I do now to get myself mentally and physically prepared to handle that stress, whether it's meditation, working out, diet changes, because that is potentially the biggest, will be the biggest win of my career. And if I do it right, it's not a matter of having to work from that point forward. After that, it's working because you want to work.
Yeah.
And the doors that'll open will be huge. So
I love that you mentioned health and fitness and stuff and kind of preparing yourself for what's coming. I think it's really important. We always hear people like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, even Gary Vaynerchuk has gone on a health kick recently and has expressed just how much that has made him able to do what he needs to do, especially with how Gary is.
Yeah.
So what are some specific things you're doing in terms of health and fitness? And
I am trying to figure it out, brother. I have friends who are diehard paleo people and CrossFit people, and I'm trying to figure out what my body, responds to. And the interesting part that I've learned is from an entrepreneurship perspective, we're dealing with stress on a daily basis, especially if you have a team. We had 12 employees in an office at EVG, and when you do the math, and they each have either husbands, wives, or kids, you're literally responsible for feeding 30 to 40 mouths every single day.
Yeah.
And our overhead was 250 grand a month, so we had to make roughly $250,000 every 30 days before I got paid. It's a lot of stress. And so, the counterpart to that is, how do people typically deal with stress? Well, food and other things that bring comfort, right?
Ice cream.
Right, exactly. Queso in my
we're in Austin. I mean,
yeah.
Every meal so far, thanks to
margaritas and queso. Yeah,
it's good though.
Not good for the health side. So, so making a very conscious decision that if you're going to run into a challenge, you can either deal with it in a way that negatively affects your health and your life, or positively, and you've just got to make a very conscious decision to make that choice. So I'm a huge fan of Onnit and Aubrey Marcus. He's a business partner of mine as well, and luckily they're here in Austin, so I've been going to their boot camp every week, which is brutal.
Because they have an actual facility, right? They're not just like a company that sells goods online.
Well, it's cool, very cool. In their headquarters, they've got a gym and a coffee shop and a retail store and all of that good stuff. So
how close is it to here?
4 or 5 miles. Yeah, it's right down the street on 35.
We'll check that out.
It's super cool.
But Lewis Howes introduced me to them, because
right.
he works with them, and it's great. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So, so just trying to figure out what I get excited about. I think I'm going to start my first yoga class next week. So we'll see how that goes.
Sweet. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
So final thing I want to talk about, Mike, and thank you again for your time today.
Sure.
Again, when I was on your website, I was looking, and you do a lot of philanthropic stuff, which I love. I'm starting to do a lot of that too. And you have worked with Make-A-Wish, and just talk a little bit about what entrepreneurs can do, even at the small level, to help others beyond themselves.
Sure. That's something we started in EVG with Make-A-Wish. We made it a goal to sponsor a child's wish here in Austin every single month for a year.
Okay.
So we did that, and my thing with charity, the thing that inspires me is actually getting to see the funding put to use. Donating to Red Cross or the breast cancer or whatever, where the money just goes into this black vacuum and you never see the impact, is not very inspiring to me. So Make-A-Wish, you actually get to meet the families and get to meet the kid, and it's a hugely impactful experience. And the other one, the other program that I'm a huge backer of over the last year has been Charity Water and Scott Harrison over there. Yeah. So again, they're exactly where the money's going to go, and so that's been really, really rewarding from a personal level, but also from a business perspective, I have met more high-level people at those events than any other event that I've ever been to. Like when you go to a charity water event, you're meeting Gary Vee, you're meeting Chris Sacca, you're meeting the who's who of Silicon Valley, and it's just really inspiring to put yourself around that group of people. Especially, I don't know about you, but I just consider myself some like dude from Austin, dude.
Like
no,
nobody, I'm the same
right?
way, man. Like
so to be around those people in that circle, you're like, I must be doing something right, and it provides you with that kind of inspiration to think bigger.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, amazing people give, and if you put yourself in those situations, I was at the Pencils of Promise Gala, and Gary Vee was there, and Usher, and John Legend, and a whole mess of other incredible philanthropists too. And my wife is interested in philanthropy, and so this is a great way to kind of help out even more. And it's not just, you don't do it for that reason, it's just an amazing byproduct of giving and putting your heart in the right place.
It brings a whole new level of awareness to you and your business and your dreams and what you can accomplish, and I just find it really inspiring. So
I love that. I think that's a great way to end. So again, guys, check out Mike Dillard, MikeDillard.com. Sign up to his email list. You have like 420K
around there.
That's amazing.
10 years, so thankfully a lot of them still read my stuff and stick around, but it's been really cool.
Great. We look forward to the big projects coming from you, Mike. So again, thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Pat. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.